Hello there. Tonight, let's settle in for a quiet afternoon at a village shoemaker's, somewhere in the soft English countryside. It's the kind of small workshop you'd happily linger in until the light goes. Whitewashed walls, a long dark bench under the window, and a single brown boot waiting upside down on its iron last. There's a cold stove in the corner with a kettle on top, an apron on a peg by the side door, and long stripes of amber sun lying across the worn pine floor. And by the way, if you'd like more stories like this one, you might want to check out our app. It's called Tonight, and it has fresh stories for you every day, so there's always something new to fall asleep to. Plus, you can hear them in your favourite voice. It's a free download. The link's just below this video. Before we begin, take a moment to settle in. Get comfortable, however that looks for you tonight. When you're ready, close your eyes. Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose and a long, slow breath out. One more, in and out. Leather. That is the first thing. A warm, dry smell, like an old wallet kept for years in a drawer. The door of the workshop is propped open with a flat iron weight, and the smell drifts out into the lane. You step in slowly. The floor is pine, worn pale down the middle and darker at the edges, where the boards are not so often crossed. A small bell on a curl of iron hangs above the door. It does not ring. The door is already open. The bell only sits there, a little tarnished, catching one stripe of afternoon sun. The lane outside is quiet. A wagon went down it an hour ago, and the dust from the wheels has settled long since. Now there is only the slow movement of warm air through the open door, and the smell of leather, and the soft tap of a hammer somewhere further in. You stand for a moment in the doorway. Sun falls in a long slant across the floor. It catches on a thin gauze of dust that hangs in the air. Somewhere down the lane, a hen calls, once, and then quiet. The room is small. Whitewashed walls, low ceiling, two beams overhead, dark with age. A long wooden bench stands under the front window, with the light pouring in across it. Along the back wall, low shelves hold rows of brown and black shoes, finished, half finished, waiting their turn. A leather apron hangs on a peg by the side door, brown, worn pale at the front where it has been brushed against the bench for years. You take another step inside. The boards give a small creak under your foot. Then the workshop is warm around you, dry, smelling of leather and beeswax, and a faint trace of wood smoke from somewhere out back. A jar of small iron nails sits at the back of the bench against the window pane. The label has been there so long it is hard to read. It does not really matter what it says. Beside it, a bus timetable is tacked to the wall, slightly faded along the top. The air at the doorway is warmer than the air further in, by a degree or two. The sun has been on the threshold all afternoon. A step further in, the cooler air of the workshop meets you, settled, slow. A little farther on into the room, the wood of the bench is warm where the sun has rested on it for hours. The bench is long, made of one heavy plank of dark wood, polished by years of forearms set down on it. 3 drawers run along underneath, each with a small, worn brass handle. A brown boot is set out near the middle of the bench. It is upside down on a metal last, a curved iron foot shape with the sole turned up to the light. The sole is dark with use and slightly cracked at the front edge. The heel is worn down on one side. The lace, undone, hangs loose over the side of the bench. The other boot of the pair is set neatly beside it, waiting its turn. Around the boot, the small tools are laid out in their places. A short hammer with a smooth wooden handle, a narrow knife, the blade darkened in the middle from sharpening, a coil of waxed brown thread, a shallow tin of brass tacks, the tin itself older than most things in the room, a small pot, lidded, that probably holds glue. There is a square of leather to the right of the boot, dark and supple, the size of a folded napkin. Beside it, a piece of chalk worn down to half its length, a short brass ruler, a pencil resharpened so many times it is almost too short to hold. The sun lights everything equally. The boot, the leather, the tools, the chalk, all of them sit in the same warm wash. You move a little closer to the bench, not too close, just close enough to see the small, dark spot at the toe of the boot, where the leather has scuffed almost through. Someone walks a great deal in these boots. You can tell by the way the heel has rounded off. One of the drawer handles is set on slightly crooked. It was put back that way once and never quite straightened. It is the kind of thing a person stops noticing after a year or so. The tap of the hammer that you heard from the lane has stopped. There is a movement at the side door, the one with the apron on the peg, and a man comes through carrying a small, folded cloth. He is approaching middle age, brown hair beginning to grey at the temples, sleeves rolled to the elbow, forearms tanned from working near the open door all summer. He nods once at you, the small, friendly nod of a man who is used to people stopping in. "Afternoon," he says. "Just looking," you say. And he nods again and goes to the bench. He takes the apron from the peg and ties it on. The strings are long and faded, and he ties them in a knot at the front rather than the back, because that is the way he has always done it. Then he sits down on the low stool at the bench, in the spot where the floor has a slight hollow worn into the boards. For a moment, he does nothing. He looks at the upside-down boot on the last, then picks up the narrow knife and sets it down again, having decided against it for now. He takes up the short hammer instead and turns it idly in his hand. You watch from where you stand. The sun across the bench lights one side of his face and leaves the other in soft shadow. There is a small white scar on the back of his left hand, an old one. He pays you no particular attention. You are simply someone in the room. After a moment, he sets the hammer back in its place and reaches under the bench for a wooden box. He sets the box on the bench beside the boot and opens the lid. Inside are short lengths of new leather, thick and brown and smelling sweet. He takes one out, turns it in the light to look at the grain, and lays it across the bench beside the boot. He has not begun yet. He is only looking. That looking is most of the work. The dog barks twice, far off, somewhere beyond the green, then quiet again. While he sits and looks at the leather, the rest of the room is quiet enough that your eyes can wander. Along the back wall, the low shelves hold rows of shoes. They are arranged loosely by what stage they are at, though you would only notice this after a while. On the left, 3 or 4 pairs that are clearly done, polished, laced up, paired neatly. In the middle, a few singles with bright new soles, but no laces yet. On the right, shoes still in pieces, brown uppers without their soles, 2 grey work boots with their tongues turned out. Above the shelves, a coil of leather hangs on a wooden peg, dark and rolled tight. Beside it, another coil, paler. A long strip of black hide hangs straight down to the floor, the bottom edge fraying a little. In the far corner sits a small cast iron stove. A black kettle sits atop of it, empty. A short stack of split wood is piled against the wall beside it. None of it is needed this afternoon. A wooden chair stands against the back wall with a cushion on the seat. The cushion is brown corduroy, faded in the centre. Nobody is sitting in the chair. It is the chair for customers who come in to have a fitting and need to take their shoes off. Today, it is empty. There is a small framed picture on the wall above the chair. A pencil drawing of a building. A row of shops in some town. With this workshop, you think, among them. The glass over it is a little dusty. It has been there a long time. A grey cat is asleep on the second shelf from the bottom, between a pair of small brown shoes. You did not see her at first. She is the same brown as the shoes around her, more or less. And her breath is so slow, it barely shows. The plastic bucket sits under the bench at the far end, half full of leather scraps. The clock above the side door is an hour slow. Tom has known this for years and does not mind. There is a soft scrape at the bench. He has set the new leather down and turned back to the boot. He has decided. He picks up the narrow knife. The blade is short, no longer than his thumb, and the handle is wrapped with a turn of brown tape near the base. He turns the boot so the sole faces him fully and brings the knife to the front edge. There is no hurry in the way he begins. He sets the tip of the knife between the upper of the boot and the old sole, finds the seam, and presses lightly. The old sole comes away from the leather above it with a soft, dry sound, like the parting of two pages stuck together. He works along the edge, 1 centimetre at a time, slowly, evenly. The blade lifts, finds the seam, presses, lifts again. The boot stays still on its last. His left hand holds the upper steady. His right hand moves in small, careful arcs. Now and then he stops and looks. Sometimes he turns the boot a little on the last. Sometimes he reaches for a small brass tool, narrow as a key, and slides it between the sole and the upper to help the parting along. Then back to the knife. The afternoon sun is on his hands. The light catches the edge of the knife each time it moves. A thin silver flash, gone again at once. The room is so quiet that you can hear the small sounds of the work, the soft, dry parting of the old glue, the little tick of the tool against the brass tacks that hold the sole, the brush of his sleeve along the bench. Outside, a single bird in the hedge across the lane. He has worked his way halfway round the boot. He stops to flex his fingers, then begins again from where he left off, around the toe and down the other side. When the sole at last comes free, he lifts it away in one piece and sets it on the bench beside him. It is darker on the underside than the top, and the heel is worn into a shallow curve where the man who owns the boot has put his weight for years. He looks at the freed sole for a moment, then sets it aside. He does not throw it out. He puts it in the wooden box beside the bench. boot, upside down on the last, is now bare on its underside. The rough under leather, pale and dry. He runs his thumb along the edge to feel for any old tack still lodged in. He finds one, draws it out with a small pair of pincers, and drops it into the tin where the tacks belong. The soft sound of the parting glue had become a kind of rhythm. Now it has stopped, and the room is quieter still. A little farther on in the work, the smell of new leather rises as Tom takes up the piece he laid out earlier. He holds it flat against the underside of the boot to check the size. His thumb at the heel and his forefinger at the toe. The piece is too large, by a few centimeters all around. That is how he wants it. He sets the leather down on the bench, takes up the worn down chalk, and draws around the boot. Slowly, keeping the chalk close against the leather of the upper, so the line will be true. When he has gone all the way round, he lifts the boot away. There, on the leather, is the pale outline of a sole. The wide curve at the ball of the foot, the narrowing at the arch, the small rounded heel. He sets the boot back on its last. Then he takes up the knife again, with the chalk line in front of him. He does not cut in one long pass. He cuts in short, patient strokes, following the chalk. Around the toe first, where the curve is greatest, then the long edge along the outside, then around the heel. The leather curls a little as he frees the piece. He turns it as he goes, so the blade always pulls toward him. The cut edge is clean and pale, slightly damp looking, smelling sweetly of tanned hide. When the new sole is fully cut out, he holds it up beside the boot for a moment. The two of them in the afternoon light. They match, almost. He takes up the knife once more and shaves a thin sliver from the inside of the curve at the arch. Then they match exactly. He sets the new sole down on the bench next to the boot. Across the room, the cat on the shelf shifts in her sleep, her tail moving once, then settling again. Outside, somebody in the lane walks past slowly. The sound of footsteps going by the open door, and then gone. Tom takes up the small, lidded pot. He opens it. Inside is a thick, dark glue, the colour of treacle, the smell sharp but not unpleasant, closer to pine sap than anything else. He stirs it once with a flat wooden stick. He brushes a thin layer of glue along the under leather of the boot, working from the heel forward. Then a thin layer along the upper face of the new sole. He lays the boot and the new sole side by side, glued sides up, to let the glue set a little before they meet. There is no hurry. The glue needs a few minutes. He rests his hands flat on the bench and looks out the window at the lane. A robin lands on the low stone wall opposite, looks once into the workshop and flies off again. A faint, sweet smell of warm wax now rises from the bench. The glue has set the right amount. Tom can tell by touching it. A fingertip pressed against it leaves no print and lifts away dry, but the glue is still tacky. He lifts the boot from its last for the joining. He sets the new sole on the bench, glued side up, and presses the boot down onto it firmly, his palm flat against the upper. He holds it there for some time. The pressing is patient. It is a slow lean of his weight onto the boot, hands wrapped around the upper. His head bent low so he can see the seam come together all the way round. When he lifts his hands away, the sole is mended. The new pale edge runs all round the boot, almost imperceptibly fuller than the upper. That is correct. The edge will be trimmed and finished later. He sets the boot back on the iron last. Now comes the stitching. He takes up the coil of waxed brown thread. He measures the length of it against the spread of his arms, twice from hand to shoulder, and cuts it free. He passes the end through the eye of a curved needle, draws it through, and pinches the end so it will not slip. He begins at the heel. The needle goes through the sole from underneath, comes up through the welt that runs around the edge of the boot, and turns. He pulls the thread through firmly, but not hard, and the stitch lies down flat. Stitch by stitch he works around the boot. The needle moves in a small, steady arc. Down, up, pull, down, up, pull. The thread makes a soft creaking sound each time it slides through the waxed leather. A small, dry sound that is very pleasant in the quiet of the room. He pauses now and then to wax the thread again. A swift draw of the line across a small block of beeswax kept on the bench, and then resumes. The smell of the wax joins the smell of the leather and the smell of the glue in the warm afternoon room. He works round the toe slowly, where the stitches have to follow a curve, then down the long inside edge, then up around the heel where he began. The last stitch he ties off with 3 small knots, drawn close to the leather, then trimmed with the knife. He sets the needle back in a small pincushion that lives on the bench. The thread coil is wound up and put away. He turns the boot in his hands once, then again, looking along the line of stitching. Your hands have come to rest on the bench beside you. You had not been holding them anywhere in particular. A footstep comes onto the threshold, and a man's voice says, "Afternoon, Tom." He's an elderly man in a brown jacket, leaning slightly on a wooden walking stick. White hair, neatly combed. A flat cap held in his free hand. He does not come right in. He stays at the door, in the warm strip of sun that lies across the boards there. "Afternoon, Mr. Hale," Tom says, without looking up from the boot. "Just wanted to know if mine were ready." "Friday." "Right you are." That is all. The old man nods once to Tom, nods once in the general direction of the workshop, taps the door frame lightly with the head of his stick, and is gone. The footsteps go off down the lane. Tom goes back to the boot. The sun has moved across the floor a little. The long, bright stripe that came in earlier through the open door has shortened and bent further toward the window. The bench is still in full light. The far corner has slipped into a softer half shadow. The shoes on the shelves there are no longer quite so distinct. A small breeze comes through the open door and lifts the corner of a paper on the bench. A customer's note, probably, and sets it down again. The cat on the shelf opens her eyes briefly, looks at nothing, and closes them. Tom takes up a small file. He runs it along the edge of the new sole, where it slightly overhangs the upper, evening the edge, working from heel to toe and back. The file makes a soft, fine rasping sound. He does this for some time. The edge becomes smooth, flush, neat against the welt. He sets the file down. He takes up a small, round piece of stained wood, a burnishing tool smoothed by years of steady use, and rubs it firmly along the new sole's edge, round and round. The leather of the edge darkens and shines as he works. It is the small finishing motion that turns a piece of work into a piece of work that is done. There is the rasp of the file, then the muffled rub of the burnisher, then a long, unhurried silence, with nothing in it at all. He sets the finished boot aside, upright on the bench for the first time. The other boot of the pair has been waiting all the while at the bench's edge. He brings it over now, turns it on the last, and looks at the underside. This sole is in a slightly better state. Worn down, yes, but not cracked across the front the way its partner was. Even so, it will need replacing, since the pair must be replaced together. He sets to the same work. The knife comes out, finds the seam, parts the old glue. He works around the edge, slower now, perhaps, because the afternoon has settled and his shoulders are easy. The blade lifts, finds, parts, lifts again. The room has the small, steady sound of patient, repeated work. When the soul is free, he sets it in the wooden box beside the first. The under leather of this boot is paler than the other, less worn. He brushes a little dust away with the side of his hand. He cuts the new sole the same way. The chalk line goes round. The boot lifts away. The knife follows the line. The leather curls. The cut edge smells sweet. The glue goes on. The boot and the new sole wait a few minutes. While they wait, Tom takes a slow breath and looks at his hands flat on the bench. Brown leather worked into the skin around the nails. A small old burn on the side of one thumb. He turns them over and looks at the palms, then sets them down again. When the glue's ready, the pressing can begin. He leans his weight onto the boot, his palms wrapped around the upper, his head bent low. The sole settles onto the boot evenly. He holds it for a long count. Now, the stitching. Down, up, pull, down, up, pull. The soft creak of the waxed thread sliding through leather. The faint draw across the beeswax block. The small clip of the knife at the end of the line, where the last knots are trimmed. The two boots stand side by side on the bench when he is done with the stitching. He runs the file round the second one too. Then the burnisher. The two edges match. He turns each in the light to see the line of the new welt all round. He flexes his fingers, then his shoulders, and lays the curved needle back in its small pincushion. Tom sets the boots down. He flexes his fingers again. He lifts the apron away from his front to let some air in under it, then lets it fall again. He goes through the side door, the one with the empty peg on it now, and you hear him in the back room. There is the small sound of a kettle being lifted, water being poured, the kettle being set on something. Then the soft pop of a gas ring catching, very faint from here. He comes back a minute later, drying his hands on a linen cloth. The back room, glimpsed through the open door behind him, is small. A square stone sink, a short wooden shelf with a brown teapot and 2 cups, neither of them matching. A window with a half-drawn green blind. A row of nails along the wall, with bits of leather hanging from them. Beyond, you can just see the corner of a small back garden. Green grass, a low stone wall, an apple tree with one branch leaning down close to the window. Tom returns to the bench. He does not pick up the boots yet. He sits and looks out at the lane through the front window, his hands flat on the wood. He is waiting for the kettle. The light through the open door has gone amber. The white walls have taken on a soft, warm colour, and the shadows have lengthened across the floor. Outside, the lane is the same as it was, only quieter. A few small birds in the hedge, a cart going by somewhere at the far end, the sound carrying thinly. The hen from earlier has gone in for the day, wherever she came from. From the back room comes the faint, thin whistle of the kettle. Tom gets up without hurry, goes through, and you hear the kettle taken off the gas, the warming of the pot, the pour. He brings out 1 cup, full, steaming a little, and sets it on the corner of the bench where he will not knock it. He does not drink it yet. He just lets it sit. The steam rises slowly from the cup in a thin column and bends in the warm draught from the open door. The shelves along the back wall have softened in this later light. There is a small pair of children's shoes on the middle shelf, dark red, no bigger than your hand. They've been there a few days. The label tied to one of them. Paper, handwritten, has gone a little curled at the edges. Someone will come and collect them in a day or two. Beside the children's shoes, a pair of black town shoes, polished, smelling faintly of the polish from when they were finished. The toe of one of them is reflecting a small, bright square. the open doorway, far away in the polish, no larger than a postage stamp. On the lower shelf, a tall pair of brown walking boots, the laces in long, loose loops over the tops. The tongues are worn dark where they meet the laces. A man's boots, used hard, but kept clean. On the upper shelf, an old pair that has been in for repair so many times, the leather has faded. The shape of the foot inside them has stayed in the leather. They will be ready by next week. The grey cat between the shoes has not moved. The pattern of her fur is exactly the colour of the brown shoes around her. Her one ear, the one toward the room, twitches now and then in her sleep. A small mouse hole, old, long since plastered over and painted over and painted over again, shows as a faint round shape in the wall by the floor near the stove. It has been a long time since there was a mouse in this workshop. A single fly has come in at the open door. It hangs in the air in the warm light for a moment, then drifts up and out again. A little farther on, the polishing. The smell of the polish reaches you before Tom is fully back at the bench. It is wax and something else. Something almost like turpentine, but milder. He has taken from a low shelf a small tin of dark brown polish, a soft cloth, and a stiff brush, and set them down beside the boots. He opens the tin. The polish inside is smooth and dark. He dabs the corner of the cloth into it and begins. He works the polish into the upper of the first boot in small circles. The leather drinks it in. Where he has worked, the boot darkens a little and then settles to a soft, even brown. He goes round the boot slowly, then again, then a third time over the places where the leather had grown dry. After the cloth, the brush. Short, brisk strokes, one after another. The brush makes a soft, dry sound on the leather. A faint shine begins to come up under it. The light from the open door catches the boot now, where before it only fell across it. He turns the boot, brushes the other side. then the toe, then back round the heel. He goes over the new sole's edge once more with the burnisher to set the shine. Then he sets the boot down on the bench, upright on its sole, and turns to the second. The second goes the same way. The polish, the cloth, the slow circles, the brush, the small dry sound, the shine coming up. He sets the second boot down beside the first. They look like a pair again. He picks up the cup of tea finally and takes a slow sip. The sun in the lane has dropped behind the row of houses opposite, and the workshop has gone into the soft, even light that comes just before the lamps would be lit, if they were going to be lit. He does not light them tonight. He is nearly done. He wipes the bench with the linen cloth. He puts the knife back in its place, the hammer in its place, the awl in its place, the chalk in the small wooden tray with the rest of the chalk. He closes the lid of the glue pot. He coils the unused thread and lays it in the drawer. The grey cat on the shelf stretches one paw, then folds it back under herself and goes on sleeping. He takes off the apron, slowly, and hangs it back on the peg. The peg holds it again, brown and faded as always, in just the same line of fold it has held for years. He goes to the front door and slides the iron weight aside. The door does not close yet. He stands in the doorway for a moment, looking down the lane in the soft evening light. The neighbour's chimney is sending up a thin line of smoke. The lane is empty. He comes back in, sets the iron weight against the wall, and pushes the door gently. It comes to rest against the frame without a sound. The bell sways once, a tiny silver glint, and is still. Inside the workshop, the air is warm and full of the day's smells. Leather, beeswax, the polish, the faint sweet trace of the cut hide. The boots stand upright on the bench, finished. The new soles pale beneath them. The polish dark and even above. The cup of tea on the corner of the bench gives off a little less steam now. The cat goes on sleeping. The clock above the side door, an hour slow, ticks on at its old pace. Tom sits down on the low stool again. He does not pick up another piece of work. He only sits and looks at the finished boots, and the bench, and the bar of light across the wood that has begun, at last, to fade. Your breath has slowed. The light fades a little more. The shelves grow softer. The lane outside has gone very quiet. Just the workshop. Just the boots on the bench. Just the slow, settling evening. The lamp on the wall stays unlit. The room is dim and warm and still.